Sorry about that. My dad got up pretty early there, and he wanted to stop in and say hello. And I was like, "What are you doing up?" And he's like, "What are you doing up?" And we both kind of nodded. And he went about his business, and we're back to recording now. Uh, so yeah, um, where was I? Oh yeah. So anyway, like the large cat that you end up, and it's like kind of like a jungle cat looking thing. Like I said, it's very wild, but its fur is always really well kept in the sense where it's like soft and like there's a scent to it that you can't remember, but it's like it's kind of soothing and relaxing to you. Uh, yeah, it you like I said, you kind of woke up in this state, and you have a conversation with this being, and you recognize her as Neruma, like the Great Maw, and all of her titles and everything like that, because of it's something that you've learned as a part of your planet's history, and that's what you think she looks like, and in illustrations and stuff like that, that's what she's represented as, this like large dark furred cat with these large with these green with these orange glowing eyes and these like shadowy wisps that seem to come up off around her. And it's like when I say shadowy wisp, it's kind of like you see a mist of like smoke, but then like inside the smoke, it looks like there's something moving, like a spirit or a specter kind of thing. But like it's waves of these spirits and specters that come up. You can never remember the exact conversation that you have, but you always feel like that there's a conversation that takes place. And whenever you inevitably wake up, you always feel better. Like you kind of feel like you're at ease. Like that there's something out there that's watching, not necessarily watching out for you, but something that tended to your needs, even if your needs weren't met. That the needs that you perceive need met weren't met. Like whenever you went into metamorphosis, you didn't wake up like with a full belly. You were still hungry, but you still had that sensation that like some sort of needs were met. And so you went through that process, and you woke up, and you were able to. At first, it was kind of like a muscle reflex. Like you never liked being seen in the first place. Like you've always felt like it was easier to slip through the cracks of your surroundings. Like you would try to kind of like stick to the shadows as it was. And whenever you kind of like had that feeling, like you kind of gripped your fist together, like dug your fingers into the palms of your hands, and it just like you could take a deep breath, and whenever you took that breath in, there was like a muscle that flexed, but like a metaphysical muscle, like a metaphorical muscle, and you would kind of conceal yourself. And you can't, like I said, if you stand in front of a mirror or something like that and you stealth, like you don't see yourself or anything like that. You see blank, like you see nothing that's there. And for a time, it was actually pretty difficult for you to. It was a little disoriented. Like you still have your personal autonomy, but like losing that aspect of seeing yourself for like certain like intricate actions, it took a little practice. But you've done it long enough now where you can be stealth and pretty much have pretty good personal autonomy with your body and how it acts. But yeah, the process of what's it called, the like of like you if you bringing out this ability, like the best way to describe it is like when you go into a stealth spectrum, you almost instinctively hold your breath, like you take in this deep breath to hold it, because that's what it feels like. Is the longer you hold yourself in stealth, especially when you're active and moving around, it feels like you start to burn a little bit the longer you try to hold it in. And it gets to a point where you kind of have to let it out. And you kind of trained yourself over the years that the longer you can hold your breath, the longer you can stay stealth. But you're also pretty sure that it's not tied directly to that. It's just the way your body kind of copes with this mechanism. So like you can exhale and then still stay in stealth, but it's just hard to maintain that focus after that point. And like I said, whenever you have like that stillness passive active, like if you're just standing still, you just have to be in a very relaxed state. Like you kind of take these shallow breaths, and hopefully this shallow breathing and stuff like that isn't putting you to sleep on the road, because that would be awful. But The DM isn't about that. I swear, player. He's here to help. He's trying to help. Uh, but yeah, like you take these shallow breaths, and it kind of feels like you're on the cusps of draining yourself and like having this, especially when you're in very deep stealth. But it's like it's kind of like you're floating on the surface of a body of water, and like if you lose your focus, you'll just sink beneath it, and it'll start to drain you really quick. Like you'll take in a thing of water and start coughing. So it's like you have to be in a very almost mindful state when you're in that deep level of stealth when you're not moving. And the DM has been pretty lax with it so far. I was definitely lax with the movies, but we'll get into it a little bit more as your game progresses in actual play sessions. But like I said, that first session was just kind of to get things warmed up, and like I said, the DM has to be mindful of it because he's not familiar with the character yet. The more you play, the better the DM will be able to readily access your information and not have to look at so many little things or have to remember so many little intricacies about like your stealth and your abilities. Okay. So yeah, that kind of covers like the change in your origin story of how you got your powers. You're not entirely sure how much is a result of like Neruma's influence, if she had any influence at all, but you do feel like as much as this dream has reoccurred and has helped you at times of need, uh, and the feeling you wake up with afterwards, like it's enough that you have a faith built in this being, like that she is out there, and like I said, it's people haven't seen the old gods in a long time, but like there's accounts of like them walking around, and like there's, I don't want to say pictures, but like there's images of it. Like it's a very recent religion. Like within 3 or 4 generations ago, like they were walking around, but they've kind of gone silent recently, and it's people's faith have started to waver, but like you feel, and like there's people like you out there who believe the gods still speak to them. It's just they don't have as much of a public appearance. Like they're not these giant creatures like walking around in the more outskirts areas of civilization. But there's also a theory going on that because the civilization has kind of spread out, that the gods have kind of taken a more rested state, and they don't like patrol as much. And not that they patrol for anything in particular, but that's just that's one of those theories that are out there, like that because civilization has spread out so far, that they basically enveloped the known world. And like I said, there's still a lot of very rural areas, and it's not like there's cities everywhere or anything like that. But it's kind of a theory that's out there. You can take it for what you will. But up to this point, and you're free to change this, like Tor is very much a believer in Neruma, and he thinks his abilities are rooted in something beyond metamorphosis. Because like I said, it's very, very uncommon for Anvari to manifest powers like this. It seems like it's happening more and more over the past 100 years, or the past, we'll say the past couple 100 years. Like you'll see more and more cases of it, but again, that's something probably more outside the game knowledge than Tor's personal knowledge. Like it's just one of those ones when you get a general feel for Unleashed and the planet you guys operate on. Like superpowers are starting to become a thing. It's kind of like early X-Men days kind of stuff. Like there's some like powerful people that sprung up, and like a lot of them are associated with the new gods. Like you're familiar with the new gods, but you don't know a lot of their names or anything like that. What they're all about. It's kind of a far off problem, and you're too young to care. You're too young, and you have your own kind of battles to fight to be worrying about like the political manifestations halfway across the planet, or halfway across the not the planet, but the landmass that you guys all live on. So that kind of bridges a little gap with Nerima, your powers. Like I said, you've had dreams. It's a recurring dream, and it's a very similar dream, but every time it's a little different. But the results are still usually the same, where you wake up feeling like really good about things and like the way they are. And like I said, your needs might not be met on the physical level. Like if you're hungry, you might still be hungry, but like I said, there's that definite feeling of content, and yeah, we'll just say content that comes with following this dream. You've never actually really talked to Nerima, but you were free to offer prayers up to her and everything like that, and your prayers aren't always directly answered, but like you notice, like in times of great need, like it's not like there's some helping guiding hand there or anything like that. But it seems like things have worked out for you a couple times when things didn't seem like they would work out. And again, it's not so much like a spur of the moment thing, like you're cornered by a bunch of guys and they're about to beat you up. It's like, you know, you might have like broken a rib or something like that, and you're not sure how it could have healed, how it could have healed up or anything like that. And you wake up the next morning, and you're like, it feels like maybe it's been set or something. So it's not like in the moment, but like it's give yourself a day, and you come out of things better than you might have otherwise thought. That all being said, that would pretty much tie up some of your soul force stuff, and we'll probably go into a little bit more detail later about your soul energy, your stealth spectrum energy, not energy, power, and how it works. But that just kind of fills in the gap. The other thing we're going to talk about a little bit about is Killraven, and kind of like the motherly role that she took on for you. As you probably remember, Killraven is an Ethereum. Ethereum tend to be tall, a little on the pale side. Like their skin can range from like a pale gray to a pale white. And when I say white, I mean like more Caucasian white, not like white, but gray to white to blue to even like a light green. And then like there are a couple that are like very, very light browns, but that's kind of not as common. And their hair tends to be very fine. Like you don't see many Ethereums with curly hair. Like it's usually long and straight. Killraven was no different than that. She had, I think, yeah, she was just like a very pale white type skin, and she had jet black hair. Nothing. Oh yeah, and her eyes were pretty normal most of the time, but whenever she would access her powers and abilities, she had this effect where like a black mist would kind of come out of her eyes. And the few times you saw it, she didn't often show you this ability or anything like that, is the mist would sometimes kind of flutter out of her eyes and look like kind of like, I don't know, like I said, I don't want to say a raven, but like it looked like a black bird. And not necessarily a blackbird in the sense where you see a lot of details like the beak, but it's just kind of like the two wings that kind of flutter out. But it was just like if you kind of caught that at the tips of the wisps. Kind of, maybe it made sense with their name, maybe it's something that Ethereums are all about, that kind of stuff. You're not entirely sure. Killraven definitely kept her distance when it came to things. Like, she wasn't some loving, nurturing figure in your life. She was there to make you survive, to be stronger. And I don't want to say it was necessarily tough love, but it was a very cold, and like, if it was love at all, or any kind of caring for you, it was a cold and distant kind of caring. And it kind of helped to shape who you are, in a sense. Like, you feel like, you've never really thought about that as far as introspection goes. You're not a very introspective person like that yet. You can choose to be later. But yeah, cold and distant. That was her parenting style. She was there to help you, but you had to ask her for help with something. She would guide you on a couple things, but she wasn't there like, okay, Tor, today's lesson is this. And like, you might come home from your day and be like, this kid beat me up, and she'd be like, well, do you know how to fight? No, I don't know how to fight. And she'd be like, well, we'll change that. And like that's kind of like how you would start to learn how to fight and defend yourself, and eventually pick up your fighting style, which is the art of shadows, I believe. Yeah, so that's kind of like her relationship with you. There was something of interest that I don't think was mentioned in any of your notes yet. Something that DM was going to get to, which here we are now. Killraven, you had caught her several times, and I think you would have asked her about this too, because you heard her mention something called the Shadow Court, and you later learned that, not through her, but like through your connections with kind of the underworld, the Shadow Court is this group of, I think it's 12. Don't quote me on that. It might be 11. I'll have to look it up later. It's 11 or 12 of these I don't want to say legendary because there's legendary masters, um, of these really skilled, usually uniquely powered individuals who are like a group of, to call them thieves would be kind of underselling it. They are thieves in that they have stolen valuable things, but they're much more than that. Like they kind of do their own thing. They march to the beat of their own drum, like, but from a group perspective. Usually there's one leader, and that leader can be challenged. Like this is kind of like hearsay as far as what you've heard from people. But like there's 11 or 12 of them. I want to say there's 12, 11 plus one leader, and it's kind of like the head of the Shadow Court. And it's like either the Shadow King or the Shadow Queen. Um, Obviously depending on gender. They they kind of, like I said, they seem to have their own agenda. Like there's rumors that they fought on both sides of the conflict taking place, like between the new empire and the freelands. That you know that you know there's no one really is sure where they stand. Like there's stories about them of like one town dying of starvation out in the freelands, and a member of the Shadow Court basically approaches a nearby town and says like, listen, you need to help these people over here. And like of course the rumor is like this guy who does this is from this town, is from the town that needs help, and every farmer that turns him down, that member of the Shadow Court killed that person, took and then basically uh, managed to forge a copy of the deed to their land and let the people who were starving move in on it. So it's kind of like this. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it? And like I said, that's on the good side of things. Like that was one of their air quotes good deeds. They have just like some straight up like selfish kind of things that you've heard about that they've done. Like they're in it for their own self interest. Like they're not just like those like chaotic evil type people. Like let's do evil for the sake of evil. Like they tend to usually have some sort of agenda going on. But they're very important to Kill Raven because she has mentioned that she didn't mention this to you, this is something you've ever heard, that she desperately wants to join the Shadow Court. She wants to be a member. And to be a member, you have to kill one of the existing members. Or one of the existing members has to die, and then you can be possibly recruited. Finding the Shadow Court is hard enough in its own right. So it's a very difficult process. And to be accepted into the Shadow Court, one, you have to have a very unique talent or ability usually, and two, you have to present the court with a unique gift that they deem is something that is worthy of you being able to join. So like there's this whole kind of shroud and secrecy that's around it, and it's kind of like the superheroes of the criminal world, or the criminal underworld that exists largely in the Freelands. You're not sure how much it exists in the new empire under the new gods, but where you live at least, like they're kind of folk legends, but like they're not like necessarily the good guys. Like they have their moments where they might do something that is kind of good but also like terrible, like murdering a bunch of farmers and then giving their land away to people who are starving. Like there's probably a better way to solve that problem, but they do their thing. You don't know any members or anything like that. You don't know their powers or abilities, but like all of them are supposedly, like, from what you gathered, like they would be like you in the sense that they have like awakened powers. Like they're and no one really knows. Like there's always speculations, like, oh, this guy can manipulate shadows, this guy can control people's minds, stuff like that. There's always stuff tossed out there, but each member is unique in his or her own right, and it's not something most kids want to grow up to be a member of the Shadow Court, because it's because like they're a little on the ruthless side. But yeah, Kill Raven, you came to find out, wants to join with the Shadow Court, and you asked her about it, and she didn't brush it off because you feel like probably in retrospect it would have just made you inquire about it more, and she basically gave you a basic understanding of like what I basically told you, how they recruit a new member. If another one dies or another one's killed, you have to present them with a unique gift, all that, all that other stuff. Like she gave you a cursory thing. It's like it kind of saved your knowledge. Like, oh, and then the more when you hear about it, you get like a little more piece of information that could be rumor or something like that. But it kind of sated your knowledge. But Killraven was, I don't want to say immensely powerful, because she wasn't powerful in the sense of, like when you think like, oh yeah, I'm gonna power up and hit some people or anything like that. But she had the ability to trap others in mental illusions. And this is something you never found out from her, and you never told her that you know. But it was kind of like you were good about like getting information by hiding in the shadows, and not even necessarily like being in stealth or anything like that. You just happen to, you have a knack for positioning yourself to get information from people who talk about her, like people who she might associate with or something like that. But yeah, she is pretty vicious when it comes to like it's like a mystical based ability. Like her abilities are tied to magic, and she basically knows how to like invade the minds of people and trap them there, and a lot of times and like torture information out of them. And the mental torture is supposedly very excruciating, and it is very difficult to escape. But she's also really nice when it comes to like hand-to-hand stuff, as she trains you in the art of shadows, which is what the style that she actually uses. So it's like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to train you with one of these styles. Like, no, this is what I know, and this is what I'm teaching you. And the art of shadows is also, again, a mystic-based fighting style. As you read the information that I sent you, it's kind of based in abilities, like being able to manipulate shadows and step in and out of them, and it's got some cool abilities. And I'm sure you're like, DM, please, my character has way too many abilities as it is, too much versatility. I just need to move fast and hit hard. I feel you, player, I feel you. But yeah, so Killraven was pretty much, she was like, I don't want to say she was your idol, like you wanted to know more about her, you wanted to be closer to her, and part of it, you think, is just needing that singular figure that you can tether yourself to, kind of like being adrift in the void of society, humanity, whatever you want to call it. Like there's a certain darkness that you found there that you could see yourself easily slipping into, and she was kind of a tether that kept you from diving into it too deeply. And it's one of those ones, you've certainly entertained the idea that it might be something that you would like to dive into, but in the same sense, like there's a kind of an uneasiness that goes with it, and it's better to have that tether. Now, since she's left you, you've kind of supplemented that tether by essentially people watching, like that you attach yourself to people to follow them, you learn about their lives, and then you basically you hold on to their conversations as if you were a part of them and that they're sharing knowledge with you. And it's kind of how you've kept yourself tethered away from this kind of pit of despair, I will call it. Maybe a little dramatic, but just this kind of like this dark place that you would go to from being like kind of alone and not having anyone. But by the same token, like you definitely don't enjoy interpersonal relationships at this point in time. This is something you can change, where you can be like, okay, DM, I'm going to snap myself out of this. I'm going to try to be, Tor's going to put on his best clothes and go out there and make some friends. Like, if you wanted to, that option's there. But up until this point, like, you've kind of teetered an edge between being this complete loner and, the only thing that's keeping you from being a complete loner is your kind of sick, mildly psychopathic attachment to people who don't even know you exist. Yeah, so take that for what you will, player. But like I said, your mind is still in a very malleable state, so that can definitely change. Uh, is there anything else I wanted to cover with Kill Raven? I'm not looking at any notes right now, player, and it's late, so I might have to go change. I might have to go back and like add some stuff later to this, or hash out things as we go. Uh, oh yeah, as far as like powers and abilities, um, specifically, like she draws these sigils, and she's drawn them on papers, and you've seen some of them in her journals, and from what you piece together, that there's basically this magical language that exists, and on top of the magical language, there are these sigils that are often called expressions, and it's a matter of linking up the correct expressions to basically create the desired effect for the spell that you want to cast. So it's like you can utter the words, but nothing will happen. It's like without the expression, without those expressions, those sigils, it's just like the power isn't there. And then what's interesting about it is they're beyond the expressions of these sigils. Like there's extra layers that you can add without kind of seeing it on any kind of physical realm. Like uh, they're like there's hand expressions there, which is like you tracing out the symbol. There's thought expressions, where it's basically a mental image in your mind that you lock in for it. There's vocal expressions where you say something, and then there's like a soul force type expression where you can basically manipulate your soul force to form an expression. So it's like you can speak at like 4 different levels. Like so, like if you said, so I think the most common one that you would probably know is like for fire is fa ithro a. Those are the vocal expressions. But then there's also hand expressions, there's thought expressions, and then there's soul force expressions. So for a simple spell, which for fire would be Fa Ithro A, is there's multiple levels where you can do a lot of different things with fire. Like fire is the core element, and the vocal expression. So it's like it's the difference between casting a fireball and summoning a fire dragon, or bringing down a phoenix to like resurrect someone, or like this is just throwing out like random spells that may or may not exist, but like that's kind of the thing, or like enveloping yourself in like a fire armor, or mixing it with something else to do something. So the variety of effects there seem, I don't want to say almost infinite, but like there's certainly a lot of possibilities. And from what you've gathered, from what she has said, is like there's incorrect ones that can hurt you, and that can like backfire on you. There's ones that are inert, like that if you have like the wrong combination of expressions, that nothing happens. Like it's the same as just using the vocal expressions. But yeah, that kind of, and her, like I said, her abilities very much focus on not necessarily illusions, but like mental illusions, like getting into someone's mind, breaking their will, sapping their willpower, that kind of thing. And you've seen her like take control of someone, and them just like howling, screaming, and it's like it's a different, like it's not like you've seen people who are terrified. It's like this is on another level. Like it's almost, I don't want to say animalistic, but it's like instinctive or impulsive. Like it's kind of like a different level of fear that you're not used to seeing in those people. So whatever she does, it's kind of freaky, or whatever she did, because she's not around. And she definitely did not teach you any of this. She was very adamant that Ethereum magic is for Ethereums only. Like it's like a racial thing like that. Like she never said that other races couldn't do it. It's just like one of those ones where like it almost came off as blasphemous for what you probably think she viewed as lesser races, to try to utter those words and grasp that power. So you can choose to be insulted by that, or you could just think like, hey, maybe she was right about something. Maybe this magic will tear me apart if I try to do it. But yeah, her mystic stuff was kind of spooky and mysterious. You don't know a lot about it, but what you know is kind of in the journal. Like there's some of it you know about, and there's a lot there that you just don't understand. Like they said, there's a lot of symbols that don't mean anything to you, but you're pretty sure are probably tied to the these mystical expressions. And like I said, the journal is equal parts stuff you've read and know by heart that doesn't seem to mean anything, which like you just don't see in the journal. Like the DM isn't writing out like a life story of this person for you, sorry player. But there, like I said, like there's usually passages that are relevant interest, or like passages that mean something that you'll basically be hinted towards. And then there's pages that are blank that then appear no longer blank, so it's almost as as if like there's some mystical force that allows you to see them when the time comes or when the time is right. And then there's also stuff that is yeah, it's just like it doesn't, today I had this for lunch and I need to add more of this certain spice to make this soup acceptable. Like, it's like it covers a lot of different things. Like not all of it is this big mystery to unwrap. Like some of it's very benign or banal. Like it's just stuff like that, and like some of it's just her musings. Like the temporal stuff was like that came off as more of amusing to you until, it's like because like time travel seems kind of outside that realm of possibility until you met Blue Bolt. It's like, oh wait, this guy said he could travel through time, and then he brought my mom back. So that journal entry showing up there it's like one of those ones where you would have read it before, you might not have remembered it, but having that event happen in your life sparked your memory of it. And it's like, oh, what seemed like the musings, her like like these tales that she'd read, and half of it didn't make any sense, and wait, there are actually time demons, and time demons are real, and there's different classes of time demons according to her. It added some perspective to your situation. But I think this is going on pretty long, and it's going to take a hell of a long time to upload. So what I'm probably going to do here is cut out, we'll call it there, hopefully give you something to absorb along the way, and we'll go with that. Alright, player, hope you have a good trip there, and we'll catch you later.